President Cyril Ramaphosa is heading to the United States for bilateral talks with President Joe Biden. They're expected to talk about trade, energy and nuclear power. He's also expected to attend the United Nations General Assembly. The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, has briefed the media on the visit, and Mohlaoli was part of that media briefing. Tumaole, as I talk to you at the moment, we are receiving live visuals coming out of the United Kingdom, and this is all about the preparations to lay to rest the mortal remains of Queen Elizabeth II. The minister giving us something of a heads up that the president might attend the state funeral?
Well, indeed, Koli, Minister Naledi Pandor has confirmed that President Cyril Ramaphosa will be attending the state funeral of the late Queen Elizabeth. And this is, of course, as part of the member states of the Commonwealth. And this is something that South Africa and the UK have shared those common links for very, very many years. And President Cyril Ramaphosa will certainly be there to represent South Africa. So this is something that is coming out, that's been confirmed by, of course, International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor. And she says that this will be part of an official program for South Africa's president to show and pay his final respects to the long-ruling late monarch of Great Britain and the United Kingdom.
Tumaole, while talking about the president's international trip that's coming up, he is headed mainly to the United States, and that's the start in New York at the UN Assembly there. But you raised a very pertinent question relating to the continent here and the trade that is meant to take place between African states. Did the minister give an update as to how that is progressing?
The minister certainly did give an update, Koli, about how that is progressing, saying that there are plans in place as coming off the back of, especially of President Cyril Ramaphosa's recent West Africa tour, where he visited several West African nations. And at the apex of that particular visit was a talk about the free trade zone agreement that would be implemented, that would create a corridor of trade between northern, northwestern, northeastern nations of Africa, as well as southern Africa. And this particular trade corridor would open up billions of dollars in terms of intra-Africa trade, and would create a situation whereby Africa would also start to start to benefit from beneficiation of its own raw materials. In the past and up to now, we've seen that raw materials in Africa often get exported out to other zones, including Europe, whereby then they are processed and resold back into Africa. And therefore, that dollar particular value is lost to the continent, even though the raw materials come from the continent. What this free trade zone would then create would be effectively an intra-Africa trade zone, whereby, of course, beneficiation as well as benefits from those raw materials would then benefit Africa's trades. So this is something that has come out, and what the minister has said is that the ministers of the various departments, including the economic sectors in these countries, the West African countries as well as Southern African countries, have been in talks to try and formalize that. At the heart of this particular development would be the development of a rail network right from Southern Africa going up all the way across to North Africa, as well as West Africa and into East Africa as well. Also very key to this particular would be the talks around the development of the routes when it comes to the ocean economy, and saying that the development and establishment of solid trade routes along Africa's coastlines are also key to developing economies along those particular parts of the continent. Key to the rail particular development would be the DRC, Koli, and what Minister Pandor said is that in this particular term of office, President Tshisekedi Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo is, of course, looking at this particular matter very closely, because the DRC is also known as the heart of Africa for good reason, a vast country that is situated right in the center of the continent. And it must be said that the DRC is one of the least developed countries. I can tell you that when one wants to travel from Kinshasa, the capital, which is in the east, to Goma in the west, which borders on Rwanda, there is a large, vast area of thick jungle. You have to fly effectively to get to that side. So opening up the development of rail and road networks would not only develop and benefit the DRC, but also would develop that free trade corridor that the minister alluded to, which would open up the continent's free trade and intra-trade potential. Now, those talks are currently underway with President Tshisekedi, and it is anticipated that even after his term of office, Minister Naledi Pandor says the DRC's government remains committed to ensuring that is achieved and realized. And already there are investors both from South Africa and other areas who are looking very closely at pumping in the much required financial stimulus to make sure that that plan becomes a reality. One thing that Minister Pandor has also alluded to, Kole, is the fact that she is aware that there are concerns that these particular trade agreements aren't only South beneficial. This means that whether South Africa becomes the only one that sends companies, including our own, commercial companies, to invest in the countries, but also that investment is a two-way street, meaning that other countries within the continent can also pour in their funds and would also see them benefiting from that particular investment, and not only South Africa, which at the moment is the financial powerhouse of the continent. So these are some of the things that came up when it came to intra-Africa trade.
Finally, and very briefly, Tumaole, the Russia-Ukraine conflict also came up. What did the minister have to say?
The Russia-Ukraine conflict remains a very key point of concern in terms of South Africa's international relations minister. This is what she said, saying that they are watching those developments very closely and very concerned at how things are being, driven as far as trying to find a lasting resolution to that conflict. What the minister was saying is that the involvement of external players in trying to find resolution should not be one of a bullying approach, but one of a consultative approach. She says South Africa's involvement and South Africa's approach to that particular conflict is one of hearing both sides out and getting a forum of debate and communication and consultation instead of a top-down approach, which she has strongly condemned, saying that other nations should not be seen as trying to impose their will to get a favored outcome out of this very delicate conflict. She says that they're going to take that to the United Nations to call on nations to allow processes of dialogue instead of processes of perhaps even stronger measures, including sanctions, including military interventions that would only exacerbate a situation whereby one or other in the players in this Russia-Ukraine conflict would then dig in their heels, much to the detriment of those on the ground. We've seen how this has sparked a refugee crisis in Europe, as well as some economic impacts that would come from this conflict in terms of export and trade, particularly of key materials coming out of the Ukraine and Russia that have been exported out of the country to try and restore those exports and restore parity in terms of particularly gas as well as other related raw materials. So this is something that the minister says will be taken through to the United Nations, as well as will be dealt with in terms of those talks between President Ramaphosa as well as President Biden.
Mohlaoli, thank you very much for that update coming out of the briefing that was addressed by our Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor.